Facebook.
I'm ready.
Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to take us live to Facebook. Sorry about this, Brad. Facebook always takes a few minutes to. So are you planning to stay in California?
Yeah, on the West Coast somewhere. They move out of state, but just out of state, either Arizona or Nevada. But it's getting kind of kooky here, state politics. We'll see what happens after Wednesday with the inauguration and so forth, and what happens with our governor.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on, you know, in America alone, let alone the rest of the world. It's crazy times we're in.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are live now on Facebook, and I'll upload this over the next few days onto YouTube as well. So welcome everyone to the Cosmic Ascension Waves of Light with myself, SomaArah. And this evening we've got Brad Olsen, who I'm kind of in awe of and have been a fan of for about 2 or 3 years. I think I started following him probably around 2009, and then left it alone for a bit, and then rediscovered him again this year. And he is a author, he is a publisher, he has traveled the world, he is an expert on, I would say an expert on Antarctica, and has a wealth of information about a lot of truth knowledge, and just an amazing being with an amazing mission at this time on Earth. So welcome, Brad.
Well, hello there. Welcome to your channel. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's
good to finally put the name to the face and have this talk.
I'm delighted you're here, Brad. Thank you for taking the time out. I'm kind of in awe, so I'm trying not to get starstruck.
Sure.
So you're in America at the moment. And how are you doing? What are you doing at the moment? Are you working on any projects or?
Well, I just launched my 10th book called Beyond Esoteric, Escaping Prison Planet. It's actually not officially out until the end of this month, but I've been doing quite a few interviews and pre-launch marketing and getting this book positioned to be my biggest yet. It's already the biggest pre-launch yet. And even before the title is officially out on February 1st, I'm already going back to the printer for a second printing. So we're having tremendous success. I'm distributed through Independent Publishers Group. They're a wonderful distributor. And just recently, one of their top executives like, "What are you doing there, Brad? How are you getting so many sales?" It's like, I'm doing a lot of interviews and doing a lot of marketing. And I guess when you get into double digit, 10 books, start learning a few things and how to get the wheels turning, so to speak. And it's been a very auspicious launch because a lot of the things that I cover in the new book are actually very relevant to this very time we're in, including what is happening right now in 2021. And when things become very well known, they are not really esoteric anymore. Then they became, a new word takes over, and that is exoteric. So for example, there are many new alternative news sources talking about the Act of 1871 here in America. A lot of people don't know about that. That makes it a esoteric subject. But basically what it is in the year 1871, just after the American Civil War, there was a huge amount of debt still from the war. There was a lot of bankers and other entities, even the Vatican, who were planning to get a foothold in America. Several decades later, they got the Federal Reserve and pretty much cemented that control over our money supply. But basically, the Act of 1871, I think, is even more significant because that is when we became a corporation, USA Inc. Again, not a lot of people know about this, but it's very easily researched. If you find this interesting, everything I talk about, I hope people go out and do their own research and look into this themselves, as I've done. And when I was opening this information up, I was just amazed how significant it is and how much it really affects every people know about this stuff.
Yeah. So before we really kick off, I've started to read your book. So thank you for sending it to me. I haven't read all of it yet, but I will. But what I did notice is that it's very well done. The images are a bit more than images. I found that they are like like sacred symbols, or sacred, I guess sacred symbols, where there was a lot of coded information in them, coded messages in the symbols.
Yeah,
that's what I was finding. So if you could hold your book up for people, because I think this is one of the best books around at the moment, with a huge amount of information, especially for people that are just waking up beyond esoteric.
And as you can see, after every chapter, there's a whole post-chapter section of images that relate to and so I come to realize that a lot of people are very visual, as you say, and you can see a lot in a picture. I like the old saying, a picture speaks 1,000 words. And many times, as you mentioned with symbolism, yeah, you have no idea how much symbolism has been a big part of our lives. And it's funny you should say that, because the first page I flipped to were all the symbols pertaining to that cup of coffee that we often have from Starbucks and that symbol on it. Do a lot of people even really know what that means? That this is a Canaan Phoenician prostitute of Babylon, which is called the Kraken. Tiamat, the primordial goddess of the watery abyss, who has 2 fishes of Pisces. Pisces rules the 2 feet, of the Piscean age. How many people drink a cup of Starbucks every day, have no idea that that little Starbucks symbol is a pagan deity? I mean, they'll probably think, oh yeah, it's probably based on something, the crown she's wearing and the mermaid look that she has. But that's exactly right, that this symbolism pervades our world and our society. In fact, the next president for the conferences, and they start up again in March, is called Hidden Esoteric in Plain Sight. And it'll be a collection of all these.
Sorry, Brett, you cut out there. You're
That
cutting
very
out a
few
bit.
people put two and two together.
You just
I'm
cut out there a
sorry.
few times, and there's a bit of a delay. So my apologies to Brad and our viewers. Perhaps we could.
Okay.
I'll try and be more aware of that myself as well, that there is a lapse. So you've got a wealth of information and knowledge, and I just think you're an awesome guy and a freaking amazing guy, actually. The life you've had and the places you've been and the sacred sites and the all of it, you know. And I saw it. I was watching one of your videos, and I saw that you got early on in your travels, you had your rucksack pinched, stolen, and all that you were left with was your money belt. So
Right.
yeah. So, but anyways, I'm dying to hear what you have on Antarctica. I think I've watched everything that you have on Antarctica. But I really wanted to go and share it with our viewers, or my viewers, and more, you know. But so I meant to say to you at the very beginning, it'll be more, rather than a straightforward interview, it'll be more of a kind of flow between us, if hopefully if that's okay.
Okay.
And because I really wanted to share some things with you, in information I've been given from the Pleiadians, but also I really wanted to focus on Antarctica today, but I'd love to talk to you more again about different things, different subjects. So what I've been shown, because for anyone listening that doesn't know, I am a channel for the Pleiadians. So one of the things they showed me in the early days was that God, where do I start? So, okay, I'm probably going to have to go into this a bit more, but one of the things they showed me in the early days is that, and this would have been around 2009, is that the downfall of Atlantis, around the downfall of Atlantis, negative energy came in, negative ET energy came in and overtook Atlantis. And just before that, or around the same time, a large meteor hit the Earth and took the Earth off its natural axis, which would have caused land masses to move. So when these negative ET energies came in and overthrew Atlantis, they dumbed down our DNA, they changed our DNA and manipulated the DNA to make us become slaves. So, and that coincided with the around about the same time with the land mass moving. And I do believe that Atlantis was where Antarctica is now, although I also believe that it was in different places. So it was more of a time period rather than one particular place, but I do believe it was at Antarctica. And I've been told that there are there's a lot hidden from us beneath Antarctica. And so at the time of Atlantis, negative ET energy came in, overthrew Atlanteans, dumbed down our DNA, and the Earth shifted off its natural axis. And the period that we're in now is hugely related to Atlantis because it is a reversal. The Earth is shifting back onto her natural axis. Our DNA is naturally raising. If you can visualize a piece of string that is coiled up and it's been pulled straight, if you release it, it will go back to its natural state, which is what I believe is happening to us now. Our DNA is naturally going back to its natural state. So bearing in mind, with this being a reversal of what happened at Atlantis, it's very much to do with the Great Awakening. And I mean, this is a great awakening of humanity. So I wanted to get your thought. I wanted to share that with you, Brad, because I wanted to get your thoughts on some of the things I've been told. What I was also told this year in February was that there was two beams of light, two energies beaming down onto the earth and hitting the earth at the time that would increase and intensify to extreme limits, where it would actually cause the earth to twist and divide and pull into two separate earths. One would go into a higher frequency, a higher awareness, a higher state of being, and the other one would stay where it is or drop into a lower frequency awareness state of being. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that and the other things I mentioned, Brad.
Sure. Well, let's start with Atlantis and being the possible location in Antarctica. There's actually a lot of geological evidence that that could very well be. Antarctica is two different land masses. A lot of people don't know that. The older part was once part of Pangaea and broke off from Australia, India, and Southeast Asia many, many millions of years ago, at a time when there were dinosaurs and cross species on some of the continents. And I do a presentation at conferences called the Hidden Anomalies of Antarctica and talk about some of the dinosaurs that once lived in Antarctica, including two species that are totally unique to that continent. Well, look, dinosaurs are reptiles, they're cold-blooded animals, and they could only have lived when Antarctica was a very temperate, warm climate. And indeed, there are fossils of ferns and other fauna growing there that had been at a time when Antarctica was a steamy jungle. Well, it's not today, I can assure you that. I was there 2 years ago, and it is a frozen continent. But the newer part of Antarctica, which is the Palmer Peninsula, the portion that I was visiting, just south of South America, that landmass is about 700 million years old. And geologically speaking, that's pretty young. And that's the presumed location where the antediluvian civilization of Atlantis is supposed to be. Now, again, Antarctica is a frozen continent. It's over 99% covered in ice. In some locations, over 2 miles deep. That's right, at the South Pole, it's almost 2 miles high, stacked ice. But keep in mind, Antarctica is also the most volcanic continent in the world. There's over 91 known volcanoes, and some of those are under the ice. So you can imagine the great dome cavities created by steaming water and volcanic activity. There are lakes that do not freeze in Antarctica because of the geothermal activity. And it's quite possible that new species of life that have yet to be discovered also exist in some of these ice domes under the ice. Well,
Yeah.
There is a lot of information about new findings.
I was
You want to
watching.
say something?
I'm sorry to interrupt, Brad. I was watching a few things a couple of days ago from kind of the mainstream kind of narrative, but they were interesting because they were saying that they had found new species within the warmer water, new species of sea spiders and all kinds of things. So it was kind of interesting.
Very interesting. This is the real new frontier on planet Earth. I would propose that the great unknowns on this planet are the deepest depths of the ocean and what's under the ice of Antarctica. So what could be under the ice are giant motherships, supposed to be 3 of them. The alphabet agencies have even given them the nickname of Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. They've been known since at least the 1970s. I think I've pinpointed one of them quite conclusively with GPS and images from Google Earth as being in the territory that was claimed by the Germans in the New Schwabenland area. Now on globes, you could see it as the Queen Maud Land area, basically directly south of South Africa. And on Google Earth from time to time, most notably in 2013, there was a dig going on there. If you go in the Wayback Machine, and it happens to be at the same location, the exact same GPS location as a seasonal base that has been run by the Germans since the Cold War. In fact, when I was going over maps of Antarctica, looking at some Cold War era maps, and this base is called Konen, Konhen, and it is a seasonal base. It's inland, probably 200-300 miles. And at that location is where this giant craft is under the ice. Now, if you look at it on Google Earth, it looks like it has a giant tent covering it. And you just see sort of the tent poles of a massive circus tent poking out. But in 2013, they were doing some kind of excavation. There was an airstrip there. There was a base camp. There were snowmobile tracks, and they had uncovered it to a substantial degree. Now, I love it when data points connect. May have been in that area originally, how this was also a West German base before reunification of Germany. But more recently, the Farsight Institute has sent some of their remote viewers to this location, and they did a reading of this craft and said, absolutely, it's not a natural formation. It's something very old. It doesn't work anymore, but it's some kind of massive machine with cavities and instruments and all kinds of different clues that would suggest that this was one of those 3 mother ships. So that's one of the better pieces of evidence. Another is the big no-fly zone over a portion of the South Pole. And that is in the same portion where Admiral Byrd said he flew a plane right down into this cavity in Antarctica, so massive, so incredibly huge, that he must have had the confidence of taking his plane down in there and turning around and flying out. And he said the world he saw down there just was unlike anything he's ever seen, including fauna, flora of a different kind altogether that would grow in the frozen continent of Antarctica. So I would propose that there are so many mysteries down there and so much going on. And really my almost 1 month spent down there just barely scratched the surface, only enough to really collect some information and put together this presentation that I give at conferences to give people an overview of what's going down there. But there are also presumed pyramids poking out. Now, some other people I talked to said, oh, no, they're not really pyramids at all, including the very famous ones that have been on Ancient Aliens and other shows. They call them nunataks, which are just their word for attractive rock formations, even though this is nearly perfectly four-sided and with the shadow looks exactly pyramidal. But I asked them, well, did you guys ever stop there and climb it or take any samples? Said, no, we just fly over it and we see it all the time, but we don't know anything about it. So it's kind of funny because the people who will poo-poo some of this information and say, oh no, it's nothing but a nunatak, are not really investigating. And so that's what I would like to do, is go back to Antarctica, especially to the New Schwabenland area. And I do know where the New Berlin base, and to go there and investigate and check out the Schumacher ponds, which are some of the... So to answer your question, I could not pinpoint where the Atlantean location would be. Perhaps it's much larger and scattered in several locations, or perhaps it's still mostly under the ice and not really recovered as much. Maybe through your channeling and Pleiadian connections, you can add some light on that. If you can ever pass on some GPS coordinates to me, I'd be most grateful, and I will definitely follow through and check it out.
Well, I think probably because of the information that they give me. I'm fascinated by Antarctica, absolutely fascinated. What's really interesting, Brad, is, and you might find this interesting as well, what's interesting to me is that when I began to channel the Pleiadians in 2009, I was living in Louisburg, which is the west coast of Ireland. It's quite a rural place, and it would actually be east of High Brazil. You've heard of High Brazil? It's one of the islands off. It's an island off the west coast of Ireland. That it's been on Ancient Aliens, where I think it was reported to have been part of Atlantis, but there was a guy Pennington.
Yeah,
Pennington, something Pennington from England. There was a UFO reporting here. I think it was Rendlesham Forest, and he had placed his hand on the UFO, and he was given a download of information, and the coordinates that came through that he was given, and it was High Brazil. So obviously High Brazil, I don't know, you must, I'm sure you've heard of this story, where High Brazil was an important piece of land, you know.
It appears and then it disappears.
Yeah. And so that's interesting. Island. Because of the distance and where I was when I began channeling the Pleiadians consciously, was very close to that area of land, which I didn't know of at the time. It was only afterwards that I found out. So that's really interesting. And I'm wondering, because when I lived there, I always felt that it was quite a sacred area, quite a sacred place. And people always used to say, if you drove from the main town, which was Westport, there was a certain place just before Crowpatrick, which is the sacred mountain of Ireland. There was a certain place where it was almost like a line of energy, where if you drove past along the road, you could feel the energy shifting. So that's interesting as well. So I'm wondering if that whole area of land, including High Brazil, is some type, is the energy is different there. It's just different. It's kind of a higher frequency, a higher vibration. So yeah.
Well, let me just address a few things. You said in Ireland, and that's where the St. Michael's line, which starts at Skelling Michael and then goes through a little bit of Britain, through Europe, through Greece, and then all the way down to the Holy Land. That is one of the most prominent ley lines in the world. And I write about that and have maps of it in my book, Sacred Places Europe. Now, High Brazil is this mythical island off this line. There's another one. There are many ley lines in the UK, and often you'll find the holy shrines, the chapels, which become cathedrals, everything from St. Michael's Tor and all these other locations that are associated with some of these ley lines. Well, High Brazil, that is this mythical island off the west coast of Ireland. It could be part of it, because what I know is that the St. Michael's line presumably ends at Skelling Michael, which is that chain of islands just off the southwest tip of Ireland, and is featured in the latest Star Wars movie. That's where Luke Skywalker was living in a hermitage, and those hermitages are still there, and they're these beehive chambers, very reminiscent of beehive chambers we have in New England here. And I think there's definitely a correlation. But as it pertains to Atlantis, there's also a region in eastern England, offshore, called is it Doggerland, underwater, where they have found ruins between Denmark and the UK. Is a very shallow reef-like area, and underwater ruins have been located, suggesting that that was all one, the last ice age and perhaps earlier, where these settlements would have been formed, because last fact, it's very hard to build megalithic or constructions underwater that were meant to be used above water. And in my I have images, as you mentioned, and a lot of
In
descriptions
your,
of other.
you cut out. I'm sorry, Brad, you
First
cut
book
out
in
there.
the series called, my first book in the Esoteric Series is called Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses. And I have a lot of evidence for antediluvian civilizations that once existed around the world underwater that really could only have been built when the sea levels were lower, or perhaps before continents moved around and these sunken empires like Atlantis went under the ocean, and there they remain to this day. So, like I said, a lot of evidence and new findings below the ocean and under the ice of Antarctica. If we care to hunt around, we'll find some pretty amazing stuff.
I know. It's the truth is far more amazing than any fiction, and far more unbelievable, actually. I think a couple of other things I wanted to share with you, because you kind of you made me think of them when you were talking, is that so what the Pleiadians shows me is that the Earth used to be much smaller and a lot less water content, so you could mostly walk around the Earth from A to Z, mostly walk around the Earth thousands of years ago. And the landmass has shifted, and there's now a lot more sea water that stops us from walking from A to B. But also they showed me that during some of the wars and galactic wars, the people used to have to hide beneath the Earth so that they wouldn't be wiped out. So what they did, they built underground tunnels. They built underground tunnels to hide in, so that they wouldn't be seen from above, so that they would be safe and protected. And they've also shown me that there is a huge amount of underground tunnels around the Earth that are still walkable, that are hidden and lost to us, lost to our memory, but are still walkable, where you can walk from around the Earth. And also not just beneath the sea, but also beneath land, like Egypt, for example. And they were telling me this for years. And then Sarah, I think it was Parkak, is it Parkak you pronounce it, who is an archaeologist in Egypt, or used to be, who satellited the Egyptian area, the pyramids, and was able to prove through satellite technology that there are, in fact, a lot of underground tunnels. So I just wanted to touch on that, because I think there's a lot that is hidden from us. There's so much. I mean, we are lied to on a mass scale about everything. And that is to do with the Great Awakening, because everything is, the veil is being lifted. So everything that we've known is falling away, and the truth is rising. The truth is being shown to us. And I think a lot of that is, and I think the reason your book is so important is because a lot of people who are waking up, it's buy this book, guys, because it's a wealth of information.
And as you mentioned, the underground bases, well, there's a map of them here in the North American continent, including connections via maglev trains that can travel at Mach 2 speeds. That's twice the speed of sound. Incredible technology been withheld from humanity. These are esoteric subjects too. But on the tip of underground tunnels, the real old ones, see these DUMBs, these underground, deep underground military bases, they're fairly new in the last few decades. But the ancient network of tunnels is quite expansive. Yep, that's right. Right around the time that they were doing some new studies in the Great Pyramid, 1993, when they found the new passage through the air chamber of the Queen's Chamber and a new door. Gattenbrink had that little robot that went up there and discovered
What year was
well,
that?
they were also doing side sonar scans, 1993, and they were discovering, this was John Anthony sonar to scan the Giza Plateau. And as you mentioned, discovering that there were several layers, all sorts of passages, including those that go directly up to the Sphinx and elsewhere. There are some videos, do believe, still up of people getting into the network below the.
I'm so sorry that your connection keeps dipping in and out. So we're missing certain words, and some of them, the name you just mentioned just now, we missed that.
John Anthony West.
Okay.
And well, there's been many others, but he was doing the sonar scanning in 93. And they've also found an entrance into this network below the Giza Plateau via the bird temple on the Giza Plateau. It's now been fenced off, but there had been a secret passage that people could get in. And there's videos on YouTube where it just goes on and on and on. And a lot of times they have to leave a string or some kind of way to find their way out because it's so expansive, could easily get lost down there. The other great network of tunnels is in South America. And one of the guys on my Antarctica trip, he actually went to the entrance of one of them in Bolivia, and he showed me pictures and described going down there. And if you keep going, there are steps going down, and according to his guide, who's never found any end to it, goes on and on and on. Very, very old, and a lot of entrances all across South America, most of which have been covered up. Now, my good friend David Hatcher Childress is one of the stars of Ancient Aliens. He wrote about it in his Cities of South America book, and these underground chambers go all the way to Brazil, all along the spine of the Andes Mountains, pop out in countries like Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru, Ecuador, and all the way up to Colombia. And so this was done without modern technology and was also to be the presumed home to a lot of treasure. So obviously why the secrecy to keep them covered up, as well as not letting people in. But there are still openings and entrances, and I know of at least one that you can go to if you know where it is and how to find it.
I mean, some of this stuff is just, it's so amazing. I know when I first woke up, when I began channeling the Pleiadians in 2009, to that, around that time, it took me a good couple of years to process process the information through my body and ground it so that I was able to then speak out publicly and verbalize it, because it is the very opposite of what we've been taught. The very opposite is true, that we're not alone. We've never been alone. We don't come from here. Our history has been hidden from us. We've been lied to en masse about everything, about our history, our science, everything. So going back to Antarctica and the the no-fly zone. I think that's so interesting, because why would you, because nobody owns Antarctica, right? It's not, it doesn't belong to a country, so to speak. So why on earth would you have a no-fly zone in a place that is, there's nothing there reportedly?
No.
You know, so
No, and flights do come in. They just have to go around the no-fly zone. But most of the supplies come in on a overland on cat track trains. That they bring in the supplies overland from McMurdo Station, and why they have to have a no-fly zone in one of the most desolate and inhospitable places of the world, and it's a big no-fly zone. It is covering several hundred square miles of places where there's nothing out there at all. It's just part of the polar plateau. But there it is. It's on navigational maps. Also, it's interesting, more data points. If you look at Google Earth on the South Pole, including the North Pole, no imagery. It's just a whiteout. It's been said that that's because they don't have satellites flying over, but I know that they do have satellites flying over at least once a day. And the South Pole Station is connected to the internet via satellite. They don't have a landline going 1,000 miles to McMurdo. They use satellite transmissions. We used it when we were down there too at some of the bases, but it's very expensive, of course, and there's no reason why that area of the polar plateau around the South Pole should be whited out. They have that information. My belief is it's being withheld, just like what is in that no-fly zone is being withheld. Why? Because there might be a big game changer there, a massive gaping hole that goes way down deep, perhaps to the level of the continental landmass, which, as I said, is very, very old. One of the original continental landmasses of the world. As you said before, and it really is interesting to bring up that there was a lot more surface area of the Earth, especially during the last ice ages when so much of the fresh water was locked in glaciers. And for example, here in California, you could walk out to the Channel Islands, which are now 20, 30 miles offshore. But they found giant bones out there. They found dwarf mammoths, a species long extinct, even cooked under a cave awning where big fire pits were found, and bones of these dwarf mammoths. Not too far away, so all these places, as I mentioned, this area between Denmark and Britain, you could walk to Britain from Europe, and that's how a lot of people did it thousands of years ago during the Ice Age. Ruins being found all over the place, off the coast of India, off the coast of Cuba. Now those ones are really, really deep, and I have pictures of them in Modern Esoteric, but it is in the shape of a Mayan city with a large central pyramid, smaller flanking pyramids, and a ceremonial area in between. So just remarkable how much can be discovered under the ocean. Now keep in mind, Edgar Cayce, who is called the Sleeping Prophet, he spoke extensively about Antarctica, talking about an age when a very high-tech civilization had lived on this planet, had technology advance of what we have to this day. And of course, that continent of Atlantis sunk to the ocean. Where would it be located? Well, he said that there were 3 repositories of the Akashic records. One was below the pyramids and Sphinx. Another was in Central America, one of the pyramid sites, which I have in my book, Sacred Places Around the World. And then the third was off of the Florida coast in the country of the Bahamas, more specifically the island of Bimini. And there, scuba divers can go down and see what is called the Bimini Roads, which are megalithic blocks placed one after another, almost 100 of them in an L shape, that was just discovered in the late 1960s, right at exactly the time Edgar Cayce said evidence for this location would be found. Now, keep in mind, he would wake up from these trances and he would not remember anything he said. And being a deeply religious person, a devout Christian, he would often say things that were very contradictory to his faith. And sometimes when reading the transcripts of one of his readings, he'd be very conflicted and almost feel guilty for having spoken those words in this trance-like state he went into. But nonetheless, these were recorded, and I have Edgar Cayce books, and it's very fascinating to go back and read some of his accounts, because similar to you having some transmissions through the Pleiadians, Edgar Cayce too can link together this mosaic of what Atlantis might have been and clues as to where it might be found.
Yeah. And I'd like to read you something from my book and get your thoughts on it, because it's about, well, I won't go into it now, but it's only a very short piece of writing. It was said to me like a poem, but they said that they were talking about a piece of land that would be, or something that would be discovered beneath the ocean. But one of the things I wanted to mention to you is kind of a joke, really, but because I know that you're very interested in the no-fly zone, you know, could you not send a drone?
Could I not send a drone? Try not to. Why, are they flying around now?
Well, I just thought, you know, if you wanted to get a bird's eye view, what would be a better way than to send in a drone? I'm sure they would pick it up, but you know, it's, I don't know. Yeah, and there was something else I was going to ask you, but my mind's gone blank. So I'll just read you this very quickly. This piece of writing, because there was reports of it being found, but then David, oh, that's terrible of me, I can't remember his name. Graham Hancock, sorry, Graham Hancock,
yeah.
Debunked it
Sure.
as being fake. But let me just find this section in my book. Okay. Sorry, guys, just bear with me a second. Okay, here we go. Depths of life, crystal on the ocean bed. Crystal on the ocean bed, far beneath the deep. Depths of life, wild force and untamed. Deepest blue, black, brightest star, lays its soft belly upon the ocean floor, untouchable and silent, silently waiting for the day to end, when it shall be found in the year 2012. Crystal clear, blue ocean covers a million thousand secrets that lay buried and covered over in a milky white haze, and the gulls cry louder still, for never a nation will set us free. Upon the ocean bed, we lay silently waiting in nothing but stillness and silence. Our waves wash into the shore, in and out, never ceasing, cascading and caressing the sand and toes of human man. Whoever will find us laying in the stillness shall be a lucky soul, for he will reap the fruits of our gold, spiritual gold that is worth. priceless gold of infinity and murky depths. We lay upon the ocean floor in silence, waiting to be found by the spiritual man who seeks spiritual gold, and it shines crystal clear like an emerald jewel, long since forgotten by the conditioned mind. Huge temples lay flooded and bare, drenched and soaked in waves and depths of despair. A race, a nation were we, at the beginning of time, temples of immortality. The truth of our origins are out there, somewhere upon the ocean floor, warm and cold, like ice. We share emerald jade crystals, huge as the mountain stone, jagged and polished, shining freely for all to see, yet not found, unknown to some, and believed by many. But still we wait to be found, and our find shall change humanity, for they will cry, it cannot be so. Oh, let it not be true. Oh, let it be true. Oh, let it be true. Let my origins shine through to my soul, that I shall remember who I am and where I came from. From the stars that I gaze upon, let my soul be known. Let our souls be known, my brother and sister, forever immortal in what is known as insanity in the humane society that today we know as civilized and just. Let it be so, let it be so, let it be known for all humanity to see that we are one, you and I, that there is no difference. When I look at you, I see myself and 1,000 words unspoken, 1,000 wars all crying no, in a cage of civilized humanity and slaves for them. I just wanted to share that with you, Brad, because I was waiting for a large crystal to be found. And then there was a large crystal found, but Graham Hancock debunked it. So what's your thoughts on that?
Where was the large crystal found that he debunked?
I'm not sure.
Was it one of the, because if it was one of the 3 locations that Edgar Casey spoke of, the Akashic records are supposed to be in a crystalline repository in all 3 of these locations. And crystals are one of the greatest repositories of information. I have a whole chapter in my new book on crystals, that using quartz crystal as a memory source is one of the best ways. And this will be a technology of the future. It's already being used now, but really will be utilized when we're talking about such huge amounts of data, much larger than we could ever comprehend. Keep in mind, though, this is a double-edged sword, because some of that technology could be AI that might be used against the human race. So we're really at this very interesting inflection point where we're gaining this technology, but there may be a chance it gets out of control and gets away from us. And perhaps some of these locations that contain the Akashic records, or where you describe this large crystal being, these could be top secret sites as well. And maybe there's a reason why some people don't want it to be known. My feeling is everything should be revealed, disclosed, that this embargo on the truth has to come to an end. It's holding us back, it's keeping us down, and it's preventing us from really coming into the knowledge that we're this advanced, becoming this advanced civilization. Now we're still like kids playing with matches. We could still, but if we're wise enough, we can use those matches to create a fire at night that doesn't burn anything but the wood we put into it and keeps us warm. They're tools, just like a hammer. You could smash in someone's head with a hammer, but you could also use it to build shelter. So it's really how we manage this technology that we're coming into is going to be the real defining moment of human ascension. So hopefully this crystal that you speak of will become known, because I think a lot of them will be found to have incredible powers, not just as a repository of data and information, but Edgar Cayce also spoke of the fire crystals that Atlantis used as an energy source. And those fire crystals are also located in the Bahamas, at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, let me ask you, what is that very weird paranormal area between Puerto Rico and Florida? And what's the third place that it's named after? Bermuda.
Well, I
The
think
Bermuda
that's
Triangle.
I think that is the area where someone did find large crystals beneath the ocean, and it was debunked.
That's right.
So when it was debunked, I thought I left it alone, you know. So maybe I need to look into that a bit more.
Yeah, look into it a little more. I describe it in Modern Esoteric, my first book in the series, and alongside the Bimini Roads, which are absolutely, so there are ruins in the Bahamas. The particular crystalline pyramid is in this location called Tongue of the Ocean. Love to go there on a scuba diving trip. But those fire crystals are more closer to the very deep depths of the Atlantic Ocean. And it's said that they're still active, that they're still generating power and creating these lapses in time where planes and ships have gone missing in the Bermuda Triangle area, some of which, when they come out, are in a different time frame, different years than when they went missing.
Yeah.
And so Edgar Cayce was suggesting that it was these fire crystals from Atlantis that were still active down there and creating these paranormal and time-lapse experiences, as well as ships that have gone missing and planes as well that have never been recovered. Always presumed, well, they sunk and they're gone, and that part of the Atlantic's very deep and we'll never find them. But other people think that there is some kind of very strange vortex-like zone in this Bermuda Triangle region.
And there's also been pilots reporting going kind of in and out of time or reality. So there are reports of people going into some type of vortex and coming out of it.
That's right.
And that's a fascinating area. So I'm going to have to look into that a bit more, into the crystal that was found. And so you've written about that in your book, in the first series. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So
right. Correct.
So I'm going to have to go. I'm going to have to buy your books. Modern Esoteric.
And the second, UFO information is in Future Esoteric, a lot of the antediluvian civilizations and Modern Esoteric, and then the third and final in the series, Beyond Esoteric, Escaping Prison Planet.
Yeah, that's so relevant to
to
what we're in now.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
What is your take on and I probably shouldn't ask this, and I don't have much of a filter, so I'm going to ask you anyway. And please respond however you want to. But what is your take on Corey Goode and David Wilcox? For years, I used to follow David Wilcox, and I still do. I still follow both of them, but I'm very much on the fence with Corey Goode.
Yeah, I like it. I haven't met him yet face to face, and that's usually my best judge of character, when I can have a one-on-one interaction, because as you know, sometimes even like this, you can see the person, hear the person, look in their eyes, but it's not quite the same as when you're with someone and can kind of read their aura, so to speak. They're just an energy field, how they behave and how they treat other people. I think there's a lot of telltale ways to look at a person, but I think generally I do follow much of his information, and I quote him in my books. I find his research, and he's a very brilliant man, to be relevant to the time we live. Whole notion of throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you find one thing that contradicts maybe what you think you know about that person, well, then everything's got to be wrong, or he's a disinfoation. I don't operate that way, and I usually give people the benefit of the doubt until I know for sure that they're doing something wrong. But I haven't felt that way about David Wilcock. He may have gotten wrapped up with someone, made him stray down a different path, but for the most part, I like his work, and I look forward to the day when I get a chance to hang out with him and meet him. He goes to a lot of the same conferences I do, but he's notoriously not a people person like me, signing books out at the tables, and I'll be there, and I'm very available, and I like to meet people. He won't do that. I've never seen him at a book signing or anything. And he could sell a lot of books, and this is one of the ways he makes a living. So sort of surprised, but he feels like there are some out there that want to get him, or he always has security at his talks and stuff, and can't even say anything from the audience, or he'll have his security go down there and escort you out. So that's just the way he is, and maybe he does have very credible threats on him, and I don't know. I'm not him, but I do like his work, and I've read a lot of his material, and as I said, I quote him in my books, and certainly have respect for the work he does. I think he's pretty cutting edge, and he's very much on these esoteric subjects in the same way I am.
Yeah, it's there seems to be a great divide that is getting more obvious as time goes on, more obvious day by day, and a lot of we need to get more discernment and be more discerning about people, because there are certain spiritual people in the, well-known spiritual people in the mainstream that are saying things that I don't necessarily agree with. I'm not going to mention names or anything, but reportedly some people have said some horrific things through tweets lately. But that aside, I wanted to mention the black goo. So kind of changing the subject a little bit. The black goo, because I was going to ask you about it, because Miles Johnson, he is one of the leaders in the black goo, and I heard you talking about the black goo.
Yeah, I have some information about the black goo in my new book, Beyond Esoteric here. Very fascinating substance. I also mention it in my Antarctica talk, because the place where it's supposedly located, where it was originally found, is down off of some of the islands just off of Antarctica. One of the most inhospitable and difficult to reach places in the world is where the black goo has been discovered. And the black goo is this semi-sentient substance which it was said could be used to rapidly clone. So if the black goo is present, and I think there's some technology that's required to make it rapidly clone a person or an animal or maybe a plant, that it could be used to help repopulate in certain areas. This island's called the South Tule Island, and this is the reason why the Falkland Wars was really fought. Because if you think about why the UK committed such a huge fleet to take back the Falkland Islands, which is still very much a point of contention with Argentinians, especially where we were 2 years ago getting ready to take our trip to Antarctica in Ushuaia, Argentina. There's all kinds of murals and memorial, much like our Vietnam Memorial in Ushuaia, of all the names of all the Argentinians that were killed. They call them the Isle of Maldiva. And so really, there's more sheep on the Falkland Islands than there are people. Why the UK went down there with nuclear submarines, with destroyers, with all on both sides. You know, the UK suffered many casualties as well, not nearly as many as the Argentinians, but it's always been a question with historians. Why would they show such a force on these islands that are so far away? Well, what I show in my presentation as it pertains to the black goo, a lot of people don't know this. There were two fighter groups that went off. One went to the Falklands and fought the campaign there, but then there was another group that went to the South Shetland Islands and took back these even less sparsely populated islands. And the very last one, and where the surrender was formally declared upon a ship, was at South Tule Island, where the black goo was discovered. And I met Miles Johnson at UFO MegaCon about 2 years ago, and we had a further discussion because I watched his videos as well, and very fascinated on the subject of black goo. As I said, write about it in here and have it in my lecture on Antarctica. And Mary Rodwell, she was speaking after me at the last Contact in the Desert. And when I was coming off the stage, she was going up, and the one thing she said is, "Wow, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that was really spot on. You could do a whole presentation on the black goo, really could." And she knows, because she's from the UK and now lives in Australia, but is a researcher of many of these subjects too. So they fought the Falkland Wars. That was sort of the cover, but to get to this Argentinian controlled base, which is Corbett, Uruguay base. And in there was this very old cave where the black goo was stored in freezing temperatures year round. Because when the black goo is frozen, it cannot become animated. Well, they did not heed the warnings, and they brought it up to the UK, and it got loose. There was a laboratory called the Marconi Laboratories that was seeking to backward engineer it. And all these technicians and laboratory personnel started to die. And in fact, the black goo escaped. And it was in the sewer systems, and it became quite a menacing problem. And I would propose that it's still out there, and it is also wreaking havoc in the world today in the form of the Morgellons syndrome, as far as people having tar-like substances coming out of their bodies. This is a 21st century phenomenon. These nanobots in the final section, indeed, all about Morgellons. You'll maybe read it here first. There's really not a lot of information about this. but I cover it
let,
because
let,
I'm
let me
very
just intervene
interested in
for
these
1 second, Brad.
subjects and intimately.
Um,
Sure.
Everyone listening, you need to go and check this book out, because the Morgellon threads, I just heard about them last night from a friend. Go and get Brad Olsen's book. That's all I'm going to say on that. So anyway, Brad, sorry, go and continue, please.
Well, that's about it. I mean, what were you going to say about it?
Well, there was a couple of things. I've been having real dreams for years. I've been having real dreams since I was a child. And I had one recently, about 4 months ago, and I dreamt I was in this. Now, these are real dreams. I dreamt I had this, and I'd already done a couple of interviews. I met Miles I was doing a UFO Academy. I was doing a talk there at the UFO Academy, and I met Miles there. So we got talking, and I did 3 or 4 interviews where he was interviewing me on his show. And I heard about the black goo through him. And then, but I actually dreamt of the black goo. Okay, so I dreamt of the black goo where it was I was in it. It was around me. But anyway, yeah. But last night a friend of mine was talking to me about the Morgellon threads. So I just wanted to mention a couple of those things. So let me see. Oh yes, one couple of things before we go, Brad, because I know that you have to go soon. One of my neighbours actually served in the Falkland War. Is there anything I should be asking him?
Well, ask him if he knew about the other campaign that went to the South Sandwich Islands and surrender papers that were signed at South Thule Island, where the black goo is reportedly taken back to the UK and wreaking havoc at the Marconi laboratories. There's also Harold Kotz-Vella, who speaks about black goo quite extensively. I've been on a radio interview with him, and he has a lot of information out there if people want to follow it. And of course, the Bases Project with Miles Johnston has a lot of information on this. And so these gentlemen were the ones who tipped me off that this was the real reason why the UK went to such great expense and trouble and casualties to secure this black goo, and it turned around and nipped them right in the butt. And I think it's gotten away from them, and much to the chagrin of those who were using this frozen tundra base to keep it in more control than where it is now. There was another medium who was speaking through some higher intelligences, some benevolent ETs, who explained the whole purpose of it being there is that many thousands of years ago, during the Toba eruption, this is about 70,000 years ago, and I've been to Lake Toba in Indonesia. It was a giant volcanic explosion that created the nuclear winter scenario. And the amount of humans on the surface planet could have been fit into a large stadium like Wembley. All the humans on the entire planet. And so there was a period where we were very vulnerable of being taken over. And so, according to Alex Newman, person who was collecting information from benevolent ETs, the reason the black goo was brought here was in the event that another ET civilization would try to take over, that they could rapidly clone humans. And they wanted to keep it in a safe, secure location in the event that ever happened. Well, of course, humans are now 8 billion. I don't think we're really too much of in threat of being overcome because of our few numbers. But nonetheless, now it got out. So I'm one of the few and first researchers to propose that this has something to do with the Morgellons syndrome. Now it also has these threads, these nanobots that are part of it, really strange science that is being brought into the world. Animals are coming down with Morgellons now too. It's been located mostly in the northern hemisphere, but now it's starting to turn up in the southern hemisphere countries in animals. So this is a scourge that's going to really affect the world. And this is an esoteric subject because so very few people know much anything about it, but is definitely worthy our attention and understand what's going on with it.
Well, thank you, Brad, for sharing. Thank you for being on connecting with me, and I'm hoping that we can do this again at some time. I know you have to go. Do you have any plans to do? I know that there's a huge lockdown nationwide, but internationally. But do you have any plans to do any talks in the UK?
Yeah, I am doing. I'm doing a conference in Vegas in March called 5D Events. I'm also scheduled to speak at Contacting the Desert, unless they go, well, even if they go virtual, I'll still speak, do a virtual conference with them. They're hoping to go live. I think they're waiting to see how it goes with the other springtime events and see what happens with the lockdown as well. And then a lot of possible conferences in the summer and in the fall.
And over the next couple of years, have you any plans to come to the UK?
Well, I've always planned to come to the UK. I just need a good, compelling reason to come there. Good friends with Carrie Cassidy of there. She does a conference there, and she's asked me to come along on a trip to Egypt with her. But again, we just kind of have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah. Okay.
This lockdown, see how serious it gets, or hopefully it lifts and it's not a big deal 6 months or a year. I'd love to come and maybe we'll get a chance to have tea together and hang out in person. But you know, I'd really be interested to find out what your content melons and the black goo. So if you wanted to follow up with that and contact me privately, or maybe we can do another interview again.
Can you just repeat that, Brad? I'm so sorry. You keep breaking up.
That if you could get that information from your contact about the black goo and Morgellons and contact that, or if you want to schedule another interview, perhaps a couple months from now, if you have that information, I'd be very interested to hear that.
Yeah, well, I'll do both. I'll do both, darling. I'll do both, and I would love to have tea with you, and some tasty crumpets or cream tea, which is delicious. It's like scones and cream and jam. You've travelled, so you know.
It's the English way, of course. Well, great. Thanks. Want to show your listeners my book one more time and see you out there in the netscape.
Yeah.
We're very on. It was a great conversation. I liked hearing what you had to say too, and we should do it again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to, Brad. And please, will you share your websites? How can people find you?
Projects I'm working on, go to bradolsen.com, BRADOLSEN.com. CCC Publishing is my publishing portal. You can see all the books that I have done, and other authors that I have published, and read a little book up on pages, ebooks, physical books. Physical books go through my office and I can sign them for you. CC Publishing, Esoteric Series, and you can find me on various social medias, Facebook and Twitter's, Olsen or CCC Publishing. So see you out there in cyberspace, but until we get to, this is how we got to do it. Just keep doing these Zoom meetings, and thank you again for having me on. It's been a great pleasure to speak with you and connect with you.
Oh, it's been delightful, Brad. Thank you so much for taking time out, because I know that you're very busy, and but it's been heartfelt to connect with you, and I've been wanting to do that for a long time. So thank you, and I look forward to next time. And I'll let you go because I know you've got to rush off to do another one. And God bless. Love you, brother.